We are now recording, and I will.
Is Laura joining us tonight?
I did not hear that she wasn't.
Okay.
I'm admitting all.
She's here.
Okay.
She's at the very bottom. Do you want to admit her?
Oh,
Oh, everyone's admitted. Okay.
Okay, the meeting is live and recording.
All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the ADR meeting on December 15th. Usually, well, actually, I guess when we first start this, are we going to do the approval of minutes first?
Yes, it's item 2.
Okay. So the meeting has now begun. I will explain the order and procedures of the meeting. To start off with, the way this works is the applicants present their projects. The town discusses it. Sorry, the town presents the project. The applicants further present the project. The ADR then asks questions of the applicants, and then we open up the meeting for neighbors and/or the general public to comment on an item. And after those comments are all through, we bring it back to the ADR for our recommendations to the town council. While adjacent neighbors and the general public are welcome and even encouraged to speak and provide their opinions on the proposed projects, the recommendations of the ADR to the town council are based on the merits of a project. No project or property owner needs to have the consent of their adjacent neighbors to have a project approved. That would take away their property rights. Also, as a general point of order, like many other public meetings in California, we limit public comments on a project to 3 minutes per speaker. Okay, we can now go, Matthew, and approve the minutes of November 17th. I read over the minutes and was fine with them. Would someone else like to second that?
I second that.
Okay, those minutes are approved. Now, we also have open time for public comments. If anyone in this meeting would like to comment on something that is not on the agenda for this evening, you can comment for up to 3 minutes on any topic you so choose. I do not see any raised hands, so we will proceed.
hey, Mark, real quickly,
Yes.
I think it'd be point of order just to let everyone know how to raise their hand so that Matthew can unmute them, and we should introduce ourselves.
Oh, sorry. So there should be, where is their button for raising their hand?
It's under the
Matt, you want to
reaction.
describe it?
Yeah, it's in the participants.
Okay.
Yeah, when you click on participants, the panel will open to the right.
And you can see in the bottom right, it says raise hand.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
So to introduce ourselves, the ADR members, I'm Mark Kruchnet, current ADR chair.
Mark Fritz, ADR member.
Joey,
Steven Sutro.
go ahead.
Steven Sutro.
Joey Buckingham.
Laura Dewar.
Okay, now we can move on to item number 1, return item, 3 Allen Lane. Matthew, would you like to reintroduce the project to the ADR?
Yes, thank you, Chair Krushnet, ADR group members. This is the Dodge and Stein residence at 3 Allen Lane. This is the second review by the ADR group. The project is located on the north side of Allen Lane. The lot size is, just a quick review, the lot size is 15,264 square feet, which meets the minimum 10,000 square foot lot size. The lot width at the front of the lot is narrower than the minimum lot size of 85, but it does expand out to 90 feet at the rear. So the bulk of the lot meets minimum width requirements as well. The property is located in the FEMA flood zone AE, which is subject to the 1% annual flood. And the project itself, there's an existing single-family residence and detached garage on the property. The project proposes to construct a new 778 square foot second-story accessory dwelling unit on top of the existing one-story home and a new 114 square foot stairwell at the rear of the home. On November 17th, the ADU group reviewed the project and unanimously recommended design revisions and resubmittal for review. The recommendations specifically were to decrease and mitigate the visual massing and enhance the articulation, to avoid or mitigate the lantern effect by altering and or minimizing fenestration, and reduce or minimize windows facing the adjacent property at 19 Allen Avenue to avoid privacy impacts. Public comments have been received. Comments objecting to the project have been received from the adjacent neighbor at 19 Allen Avenue with concerns about potential view impacts and privacy impacts of proposed two-story development. And commenters in support of the project without providing specific reasons are listed. Permits required are an ADU permit with exception to construct a new ADU above the first story. The exception does require discretionary review, and because the ADU is subject to discretionary review, it is also subject to design review for the exterior remodeling resulting in additions more than 200 square feet to increase the existing roof height and for construction and improvements within 25 feet of a creek, or I should say within the top of a creek bank. So to conclude my presentation, staff requests that the ADR group discuss the merits of the project and provide a formal recommendation to the town council regarding the merits of the project consistent with design review criteria and standards. That concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer questions, and the applicant may also want to present a presentation as well.
Tristan, would you like to present?
Yes, Mark, I would. Matthew, am I able to share my screen?
I've just given you that capability, I believe. You should be able to do that now.
Fantastic. So very briefly, I'm just going to walk through the elevations and floor plan of what was submitted previously, just so that we have a starting point. Then I will address the specific concerns that the ADRG brought up at the last meeting, and then discuss how they were mitigated with our newly proposed design. So very briefly, the floor plan is the ADU on the second floor, a stair and access entry on the north side of the building, living room on the west end, bathroom, closet, and bedroom for the ADU. Previously, we had proposed that we would keep the basic vocabulary of the existing home. So I'm just going to do one other thing here just to kind of set that table. This is the vocabulary of the existing home. It's a 3 and 12 slope roof, dark eaves, white, either vertical wood siding or stucco, and sort of in a mid-century modern style.
Join with video right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that. So we had proposed to preserve that style with the house, and that met some, and I think fair pushback from the design review board on the way that we integrated the roof and the upstairs massing and the size and bulk of the massing, and also some privacy concerns with the neighbor at 19 Allen Ave. And so we went back to the drawing board and we looked at those specific comments: the privacy for the neighbor, the lantern effect at the stair and second story, reducing the massing, and then integrating the new construction into the old. And so we went back and looked at how
maybe.
Sorry, is there somebody trying to make a comment, or?
I think someone needs to mute
it's-
themselves.
It's somebody who's got an
It is
iPad.
distracting.
Sarah,
Sorry.
iPad.
And so anyway, excuse me for breaking. So we came back and we looked at how could we do this? And I'm going to start with the smaller aspects of it, but really it was a top-down sort of how are we going to revise the massing and how are we going to integrate this structure, this new second story addition into the existing structure, which because it had a mid-century modern style, and the roof on the two-story section with a low slope roof doesn't really work that well. That was a fundamental challenge. So we started looking at the materials and how to integrate those. So let me jump to the 3D. I apologize. What we ended up with was a low slope roof that's an offset gable. I felt that by offsetting the gable, we took ourselves away from that basic form of the 3 and 12 roof, which allowed us to keep a lower slope on the roof, which I think was important to avoid increasing mass as we sort of dealt with the volume per se. The second thing we did, and this came from some of the images that Henry Wykowski showed last time, was that one of the things that I noticed in the views from his house was there was a lot of foliage, and a very white structure was going to have a large visual impact. So I spoke with my clients and we looked at materials that might be darker and therefore blend into the background more, so as to reduce the visual mass or the visual impact of the mass on the neighboring properties, not only Henry's, but everyone around. And then the third thing we did was we carried that roof pitch down into the stair tower to reduce the mass and bulk of the stair tower, which helped us start to reduce the lantern effect. That was a challenge and concern in the project. We further reduced the lantern effect by taking away about 2/3 of the glazing there and only leaving glazing in specific areas where it was, where it was helpful for bringing in light, didn't affect the privacy, and also was sort of in your view line as you were participating in the space of the stairs. So we tried to be strategic with that. In terms of other things that we did to reduce the mass, we borrowed from the front of the property where the living room corner is glazed as you come in the entry down here. We borrowed that same motif for the living room upstairs to help sort of break down, again, the visual impact of the mass. We did experiment with some options of trying to reduce the actual physical mass up there, but because of the way that the house integrates into the existing house, breaking down the mass without totally undoing the idea of having a second floor ADU seemed contrived and didn't really solve the problem. So we hope that just by reducing the sort of bulk of the structure with some revisions to the roof and again, reducing the visual impact of the mass, that we've mitigated the effect of what was challenging in the last scheme, where we had, this is the same view. This is the same view where we had the sort of standard style, larger overhang, larger mass here, more fenestration, as opposed to what we have now, which settles back into the site, I think, substantially better. The only other things that I would mention here are, in order to integrate it by using a different material, we kept the same style of vertical boards that was represented at the front of the house, kept the same proportions of the boards. So we're trying to reference the material while also trying to integrate this mass into a single mass rather than having a wood top and a stucco bottom, so that the new addition and that whole wing of the building really reads as one element that's then sort of situated and attached to the back of the structure. I mean, I think that's the most challenging part of the design, is how do we integrate this second story to make the back part look cohesive while still working with the front part. And in this, I think that the intent was to sort of reference the front by using some of the same proportions and style of material, but really separate and unify the back piece as one entire two-story block, rather than trying to borrow the roof form and do some things that don't really work in a two-story structure from the original structure. And I think that's enough of my introduction. I'm happy to answer questions and whatnot from the ARDB or anyone else.
Hey, Mark, I think you're on mute, Mark.
Yeah.
We can't hear you. There you go.
Sorry.
Start
I
over.
asked if I was surprised that no one had any questions. Does anyone on the ADR have any questions for Tristan?
I do not.
I don't.
Okay, well, I will say I'm surprised once again that no one has any questions, but we've all seen this project before except for Laura. Mark, would you like to go? Oh, sorry, I will open it up to the public for anyone in the public who has any questions or concerns about this project.
I believe Henry Wykowski would like to speak.
Yes, and I just unmuted Henry.
Okay. Well, I did submit a letter that I hope you all had a chance to review. You know, since last month's meeting, I have given this much thought, and I think that, as I said the last time, this ADU will change the character of my property and its view and privacy. It's true that one of the group members raised at the last hearing that this would only block the view behind the addition. It wouldn't block my entire view. But I hope you can all appreciate that right now, I don't see any other structures. They're all single family homes, the one at 3 Allen and the one next door. So I don't see anything right now. And if you allow this to go forward, it's going to overwhelm my backyard. And of course, this will diminish the value of the type of visual seclusion that I presently have. And over the years, people that have visited my house have all commented on, hey, here you are right in downtown Ross and you don't see any other buildings. So that is worth something. As for the revisions that were made, I think that the relocation of the windows in the bedroom certainly lessened the intrusion on my privacy, which was apparent, I think, to everybody. But they still have 3 windows over on the right-hand side. And that, of course, doesn't eliminate it completely. And I do believe that at least one and possibly 2 of the group members said that one thing that could be done would be to eliminate the windows on that side of the building to address that issues. So I think one of the things that if you're going to allow this to proceed to consider is there's actually 2 things. Number one, if the glass on those windows could be frosted so that people couldn't look out directly into the backyard, that would be helpful. And then I also remember when the people did the house at 5 Allen Avenue, one of the compromises that they entered into with the neighbors when they wanted to put on a partial second story was to do clear story windows at a height of 6.5 feet. And that, of course, does ensure the privacy. You know, while I don't support the addition for the reasons that I previously stated, that, you know, there was a suggestion at the last meeting by at least one person that the living room be eliminated, that this didn't have to be as large as it is. And if the living room were eliminated, it would move the house back. And keep in mind that this addition is going to be right on the 15-foot setback. So there's this is going to be a big presence to my property. I know a number of people talked about shrinking this. Certainly, if you eliminated the living room, it would shrink it. There was also one suggestion that perhaps you flip the bedroom and the living room and reduce the size of the bedroom. When I went back and I looked at the plans, the proposed bedroom is overly generous. It sits on top of the current master bedroom and greatly exceeds its size. And you can see that by looking at the blueprint or whatever the plan is. So, you know, based on what I heard at the last meeting and what I'm seeing here, some improvement has certainly been made, but it's still very large. It's still boxy. And it has, you know, the character and appearance of like a duplex apartment or, you know, like a prefab that was dropped down on top of the existing property. So, you know, I have to continue to ask you not to approve this as presented.
Right.
And I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody would have about that.
Thank you, Henry. Does anyone else in the public have a comment or question regarding the project? Okay, then I will bring it back to the ADR for comments and recommendations. Mark, since you've seen this project before, would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate the work that Tristan's done to mitigate the mass appearance. We haven't dramatically reduced the mass in any substantive way, but I think the fenestration, I am perfectly comfortable with the sort of slot window on the side that wraps the corner. I think that that's a nice gesture towards the existing architecture. So I think that's a successful move. I think that is a very, very small, I don't know the dimension of the window offhand, but it's probably about 2.5 feet at most on width. So I don't foresee that as being a privacy issue on the particular neighbor. The reduction of the glazing and the fenestration at the stair tower is important. Like the roof modifications at that make the mass come down significantly. So those are all improvements. The color palette is also an improvement, right? This thing receding into the background is gonna, that color is gonna help it do that. Ideally, you know, this was, given the constraints, I recognize the structural constraints of the project is being proposed with. Ideally, this was a reduced size mass where it's be able to be pulled back from that 15-foot setback. But at this particular time, I think enough has been done to mitigate the mass and to articulate it in a way that it works with the existing home that I could support this particular application. Again, you know, I wouldn't favor second-story ADUs as a standard, but I think in this particular case, given the lot location, I think it's reasonably appropriate to go this direction. I didn't see another spot that I would recommend on the site to make a more improved second unit. So I think those are my comments. I think I can support the revisions. You know, do address the majority of the problems with privacy and bulk and mass, specifically with revisions to the stair tower that significantly help the addition.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Joey, would you like to go next?
I actually completely agree with Mark, so I won't waste time repeating what he said. I agree with all the points he mentioned, and I can support it as shown.
Okay, thank you. Stephen?
Yep, I agree as well. And Mark should always go first because he's so eloquent.
Okay, we'll remember that for next time. And Laura, I know this is your first time seeing the project. So if you'd like, I could go first and then you go after, or you can go. I'm fine either way.
Oh, I'm fine to go ahead.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the design review from last month, so I kind of caught up with all of the issues, and I feel like the architect really did address most of the comments very well. Yeah, so I would actually be in support of this project.
Right. Thank you, Laura. I am also in support of the project for the reasons that you all are. And just to address Henry's comments, because we always do want to take comments to heart. I realize that if you're ever in that backyard, that currently you don't see any structures and you would, but that's the case for many homes in Ross. And whether or not it makes those homes more or less valuable, the idea of seeing another home from your backyard is certainly not unique to your lot and would be the case for the majority of lots in the town. Okay, so we have all of the recommendations, Matthew. The ADR unanimously recommends the project proceed. The town council should approve it.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Stoll residence at 10 Fernhill Avenue. And for these two next projects, they're both close enough to my residence on Norwood that I need to recuse myself. So Joey, the co-chair, will be leading the meeting for the next two items. I'll still be helping Matthew run the meeting, but I will not be commenting on these two projects. Thank you.
Okay, so here goes. So for this project, 10 Fernhill, the way that we will start is that Matthew will present the project to all of us. And then from there, we will have the applicant also present it. So Matthew, would you like to go ahead and start by sharing your screen here, and let's get going.
Yes, thank you, Acting Chair Buckingham, ADR members. The project before you is the Stoll residence at 10 Fernhill Avenue. The architect is John Clark. The lot size is 12,857, which meets the 10,000 square foot minimum lot size. So it's not a constrained lot regarding lot area. The lot width, however, is narrower than the minimum lot width. So there are side yard constraints, and it's located in FEMA flood zone AE. And project history, according to the county assessor, the project was the property was originally constructed in 1911. In 1964, 1988, and 2001, variances were granted for non-conforming construction, essentially related to non-conforming setbacks. And so the project proposed today, we see in site plan, the existing site plan on top and the proposed site plan below. The three major project components are to reconstruct and relocate the existing non-conforming garage, which I am indicating now with my mouse. It's currently located along the north side property line. The project proposes to reconstruct and relocate the garage with different dimensions, 5 feet off of the property line, a little bit closer to the front property line, while maintaining the 391 square foot size that it currently has. The project would also construct a new pool in the open rear yard area, which would meet setbacks, so conforming setbacks for the pool. And the project would also construct a new circular permeable driveway and parking area at the front yard of the property, where there is currently asphalt driveway and parking area. As far as building details, we see the four existing building elevations here on the left and the four proposed building elevations here on the right. So one notes that from the side yard neighbors, or from neighbors located to the sides, the dimensions of the building would substantially increase, both in, or I should say, in width, length, and in height. Overall, however, the 391 square foot size does remain the same, which allows the project to be considered under non-conformity permit. So to look at some of the details, the project would move the existing garage 5 feet off of the current property line location. The ridge height would increase from existing 11 feet to proposed 14 feet. This is a good time to mention that there's an erroneous reference in the staff report to heights of 12 and 15. However, the project plans and the project data in the staff report do clearly indicate 11 and 14 as the existing and proposed ridge heights. The length of the building would increase by 8 feet, again, as shown here in the elevations, and the width would narrow. So the overall project would lengthen and narrow and raise the garage, and as well as reduce the number of covered parking spaces from 2 to 1, which would still meet the minimum requirement for the zoning district. In terms of landscape, the project would add a new row of 15-gallon English laurel and Victorian box plantings in this location, in the area, the newly created setback area between the reconstructed garage and the property line. This would be done, of course, for privacy and screening. These would replace a row of coastal redwoods, which are up to 10 inches in trunk diameter currently. Those would be removed and again replaced with the 15-gallon plantings. And the project again proposes new permeable driveway and parking areas in the front yard. Overall, the project would reduce impervious surfaces on the property, even while adding a new pool, and that would be done by removing and replacing a lot of existing impervious surfaces with new permeable materials. The colors and materials are rather traditional, featuring shielded downlights and wood shingles, as well as wood doors and wood trim, and landscape materials largely almost all permeable. I believe there's not, aside from the pool, I don't believe there's any new impervious surface proposed. And public comments have been received objecting to the project from neighbors. The Russells at 8 Fernhill Avenue are concerned about potential impacts on views, light and air, privacy, and flood control. And also William and Sarah and Devlin have concerns about potential impacts on flood control. The permits required for the project are design review to relocate, reconstruct an existing building exceeding 200 square feet of floor area and to increase the building roof height. That would be the non-conforming garage, and a non-conformity permit to allow for the altering of that existing non-conforming structure because the structure itself has a non-conforming setback and the overall property is non-conforming with relation to floor area. As I mentioned earlier, if the project was proposing to increase the non-conforming floor area, then a variance would be required. But per the code, a non-conformity permit appears to capture the scope of work. So in summary, staff requests that the ADR group discuss the merits of the project and provide a formal recommendation to the town council regarding the merits consistent with design review criteria and standards. That concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions. And I believe architect John Clark would also like to make a presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Okay, John, it's your turn to present the project to us.
Okay. Good evening, ADR members. Since this is the first time you guys have seen this project, I'd like to walk you through some elements of the site design, development of the proposed reconstructed, relocated garage and swimming pool.
John, could you share your screen? Could we go back to a shared screen, or am I missing something here?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
You got it. So I'm going to present some of the site development, development of the garage design, and then Shelby Lamott, landscape architect, is going to address some of the site improvements that are being proposed. The property is a long and narrow lot. You can see here it's 50 feet by 250 feet with the existing house located toward the front or the south side of the property. There's an existing palm tree right here that's a mature, significant landscape element in the rear yard. And it's something that our clients really want to preserve. And given that location, it really bifurcates the rear yard into two spaces, one that's closer to the house and one that's further away. If we take a look at the existing plan with the garage here, together with that palm tree, the existing garage really creates a bottleneck for accessing this rear part of the lot, and is something that is really underutilized right now. So part of our site design is to take that existing garage, which you can see sort of here in these dashed lines on the site plan, and to shift this garage to the south. What that does is it eliminates this bottleneck that's created and gives us a much better access to the rear part of the lot and sort of connects down the center of the lot, the swimming pool, to the house. This zone closest to the house would be a year-round area with lawn and patio and pizza oven and entertaining area. And the area furthest away from the house would be a little bit more seasonal with the swimming pool in there. Maybe not a 4-season occupation. But one of the things that by moving the garage as proposed closer to the house, we're able to relate it more closely to the house. The form of the garage is proposed to more closely resemble the form of the existing house. With a gable like this, that's much different from the existing gable that's much more gentle. The selected materials also match those of the existing house. Matthew pointed those out: shingles, traditional trim, things like that. And the proximity of the garage is much more appropriate. Access to it is much easier than the existing location. There's just less traversing of the site. The proposed garage has shielded downlights, which is on that material sheet as well, which is consistent with the lighting that's installed on the existing garage on the south and the west sides of the garage. As Matthew pointed out, this proposed garage is reconstructed so that it's 5 feet off the property line, lessening the existing nonconformity and allowing for screening to be planted along the side of the structure. And Shelby will go into that screening a little bit later in the presentation. One of the things we wanted to make sure is that we wanted to ensure that this yard remains usable. And so we're proposing to pull the building off of the property line, but we're also proposing that this western edge of the proposed garage aligns with the face of the existing garage. And so, as Matthew highlighted, to do that, the building is going to become more narrow than the existing garage. And with the same area, it grows 9 feet in length. What was also highlighted in Matthew's commentary is that the garage is going to grow in height by 3 feet. The existing garage is 11 feet tall. The proposed garage is 14 feet tall. And as it's proposed, that garage is within appropriate scale for a detached garage and not out of character with the setting or other structures that are in the neighborhood. It's 13.5 feet wide, 14 feet tall. And at that height, the garage basically creates a structured buffer between the two properties, the Stoles and the property to the east. It allows for the installation of equipment for the swimming pool and does not compromise the access to light and air for the neighbor. We've put together this study here, just a simple diagram. This is the section going through our garage building with the ridge at 14 feet, the width of the building at 13.6 feet, and we're 5 feet off the property line. From the survey information we were able to gather, we got the finished floor, sill, and head of the adjacent structure, as well as its proximity to the property line. The ceiling and the eave and roof slope and elements like that have not been surveyed. And so we're really just focusing on this aperture with respect to this structure. What I'd like to highlight in this structure, in this diagram, is that if a 14-foot screen plant is put here, this building becomes shielded from view. At this height, from the Stoles backyard, the privacy of the Russells is preserved. The access to sunlight way up in this area coming down is by no means compromised by the height of this building. In addition, this proposed height will not cast any shadows onto the windows of the adjacent structure. This is a shadow study that we put together. It takes 4 times of day, 4 times of year. Up here, you can see March 21st, vernal equinox. Times of day are 9 o'clock, noon, 3 o'clock, and 6 o'clock. 9 o'clock in the morning, shadows are cast to the west. These are the shadows. In the afternoon at 6 o'clock or in the evening, we start to get shadows on the bottom of the building. Move to June, sun angles are a little higher. Shadows cast just over what would be representative of the fence that's between. I have to say these studies don't take into account any of the planting that would go in. We're really just looking at the form of the building at this point. September, shadows are a little bit longer. Shadows climb up onto the building right here at 6 o'clock. December, Shadows are much longer. And then by 6 o'clock, it's dark. Part of the reason for the increase in height in this building is to consolidate the pool equipment into the garage. And that would allow for only one structure to be put on the site. Without that consolidation, a separate structure is going to be required to house the required equipment for the pool. And to comply with the FEMA requirements that are in place on this lot, that equipment needs to be located above the base flood elevation, which is roughly 6 feet. And then the enclosure would then need to house that equipment with all the required clearances, and that would get us up to the structure height of 14 feet tall. That additional structure would result in additional floor area, additional building coverage, additional impervious surface, all items that are not increased by the consolidation into the reconstructed garage with a height of 14 feet. In addition, pool equipment structure would require a variance, most likely, as it would be located outside the buildable area of the lot. If we look at this lot, Matthew highlighted the fact that this lot is 50 feet wide, which is below the minimum 85 foot width lot. These two lines represent the buildable area. The swimming pool, as a visual, basically occupies almost that entire width. So if we build a separate structure for the pool equipment, it's going to fall either right in the middle of the yard here, a 14-foot tall silo, or somewhere else. And that would require a variance where when we consolidate it into the reconstructed garage with a height of 14 feet, we don't have to go through that variance process, and it's one less structure on the property. In addition to those two items, consolidating the pool equipment into the garage will enhance the acoustical separation for that equipment. Most pool equipment sheds have a single door going into them. The door is always the weakest link for acoustical separation. In this case, the pool equipment loft is located behind a door, which is accessed by going into a door in the building. So we have two doors sealing the acoustics for this pool equipment. We've built pool equipment sheds and have offered and still offer the opportunity to go tour one locally, so you can actually see how quiet it is with just a single door. And we're confident it's going to be even more enhanced with a double door. So we feel that the proposed garage design best satisfies the challenges presented by this long, narrow lot. It allows for better connection with the swimming pool here to the house. It more closely relates the garage to the existing house, both in form, materials, and proximity. It accommodates the pool equipment requirements in a smart, efficient way. And we feel it does not negatively affect the neighbor's access to light and air or privacy as positioned. The proposed swimming pool, as I said, occupies this second zone at the rear of the property. And access to that swimming pool is by a path that goes along the western face of the proposed reconstructed garage and along the eastern side of the swimming pool. It's within the buildable area of the lot, and it's elevated 1 foot above grade to create a seating bench and to also prevent debris from going into the swimming pool. A couple of things that are worth noting. The story poles that have been put up are accurate and have been checked by both myself and Shelby. And we can provide photographic documentation if that's required, verifying that the ridge is in fact at 14 feet. The existing impervious surfaces have been verified. And this application in front of you is for the relocation of a non-conforming garage and a swimming pool only. One item I'd like to bring up in the staff report is that the existing garage is not a 2-car garage. It has a 13-foot door on it, which cannot feasibly accommodate 2 cars. So I'd just like it noted that the existing garage, I think for all intents and purposes, should be considered a 1-car garage. It's not of consequence because we still satisfy the parking requirements with this proposed plan, but I think it just should be noted. Shelby is going to take over now and walk through the site improvements, and I'm available for any questions that come up. Thank you.
Thanks, John. All right, Shelby.
Okay, there, I finally unmuted. Thank you, John, for walking us through that. I'm going to share my screen here, make sure I have my drawing pulled up. Sorry, I'm not. Oh, what's that? This is the screen I want to share. Sorry, I'm getting there. I don't know why it's not sharing. It worked so well when I was practicing this afternoon.
And Matthew, does she have the control to be able to share? Is that, have we enabled that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
It does, I do.
Sorry,
it
just
has
wanted to check.
the ability.
John, do you have access to the landscape site plan? Maybe you could share it and I'll talk. I don't know why that's not coming up. Keep going. There it is. Thank you. So I'm just going to walk you through a few of the improvements that we've looked at in terms of trying to maintain the kind of soft quality of this lot. When you walk on the lot right now, it's kind of verdant and soft, and that's a quality that we'd like to maintain. And so starting from Fernhill, we've designed a circular driveway to allow for some increased parking off the street. Has an island that we would plant so that we have a little bit of screening, but our goal was really to kind of upgrade the entry to the house and upgrade the face to the street, while we remove all of the impervious surface that's in the front. There's asphalt driveway, there's asphalt leading to a mortared bluestone walkway, and all of that goes away in deference to more porous surfaces in the front. The other goal that we had is there are several just amazingly beautiful Japanese maples in the front yard, and we're preserving all of those. And by using a porous paving, it allows a healthier root zone for the existing mature trees. So the kind of leafy quality of the front yard remains while we preserve those trees and allow for increased parking and a nice turnaround and a grander entry to the front of the house. So that's the front. And then coming down the side, again, there's asphalt driveway all the way to the back corner of the house. All of that's removed and replaced with a gravel driveway all the way to the garage. We felt it was important to pull the garage forward so that we shorten the amount of driveway on the property. It's already a narrow and constrained lot, and giving up too much square footage to cars is not really the best way to use this lot. So we pulled that forward, and then the pathways that go out to the pool are all stepping stone pathways. You can see in the materials board there, there's stepping stones along the edge of the lawn area. There are stepping stones and gravel along the pool area. There's a gravel patio at the back of the pool. All in understanding that we do have a flood zone in this area, and that it's really very important to maintain porous surfaces wherever we can. And so along the edges of the property, we are carefully looking at where there are a lot of existing mature hedges here now that will remain. And so we're looking at the gaps in the hedges at the back of the property. There's a gap, and so we'll put some larger evergreen trees back there. Along the back of the new garage is basically a continuation of the hedge that exists further back on the lot, so that will become a continuous green edge all along the eastern property line. And then a secondary hedge will go between the house and the garage, just to create one more layer of screening from the main living space of the residents to the neighbors, and just working on keeping the screening in mind. And a lot of this is shown on plan and is really accomplished on site, excuse me, when the trees are brought on site and we look at the angles of views from the house and views from the neighbors' windows. And we really locate these trees very specifically to accommodate screening requirements between properties that are so narrow and close together. I mean, that's the nature of this neighborhood, and that's what we do to try to help people maintain their privacy. So everything that we've designed here is to maximize the open spaces of the lots that are important for the use by the family, accommodate a pool, and keep the lot kind of verdant and soft and still kind of well grown in a way, so that we don't lose the character of the site now. So I think that's all of my notes. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Does anyone on the ADR have questions of the landscape architect? Thank you for your presentation, both of you. Maybe
Joey, I have a quick question, which is I'm not aware of how tall 15-gallon laurels are. Is that a mature laurel or is that a small one? I don't know.
That is not a mature laurel. And we start there just as a placeholder. A 15-gallon laurel depends on the time of year and the nursery and everything, approximately 6 feet tall going in. You can buy a 24-inch box laurel that's 15 feet tall to 20 feet tall. And it depends on the time of year and the nursery.
Thank you.
I'm just going to finish. This being a critical item, we would definitely choose these plants early, and if we have to contract grow them on so that they're the appropriate size, that's something we can do.
I have a question. Why are you removing that row of the redwoods and not just keeping it there and planting the laurels in front of that?
The redwoods are planted approximately 3, 4, and 5 feet apart, which is, it's just not good horticultural practice to put redwoods that close together. It's actually, in my opinion, incredibly irresponsible to plant redwoods in this configuration, especially with buildings so close on either side. Our arborist, and the redwoods have been topped significantly multiple times, and so they've already been disfigured in terms of maybe we can save 1 or 2 and keep some screening in one place or another. But they've been completely disfigured, and our arborist contends that they're a fire hazard this close to buildings.
Another question is that gate there, is that an automatic gate or that's right near the existing residence? Could you describe that? Sure,
that's a vehicular gate. At this time, we don't anticipate that it's going to be an automatic gate. It's a double swing wood gate. I believe there's a detail of it in this set at the end. Because we have a pool, we will have a pool back here. We need to have the ability to gate it off.
Okay. Does anyone have any more questions of her or of John? Should we move to John?
I do have one more landscape question if I could, Joey.
Yes.
You mentioned, Shelby, that you're maintaining the maples. I just want to make sure I understand which trees those are. There's a row of street trees, as I characterize them, street trees. Are those the maples?
No, those are oaks, and those are actually off the property. But the maple trees are closer to the house. They have a more open branching, but those oaks that are along the street will also be maintained.
That was actually my question. I didn't think they were maples either, but I couldn't understand what you were talking about. So those oaks are, I don't see them on the drawing, but I can be sure that those are maintained. And the driveway, I was trying to determine where the driveway came out adjacent to those on the west side. Is that how that works?
Yes.
Okay,
So the oak trees are shown, there's a little circle and then a drip line.
okay.
Um,
Is
on-
it the one on the very corner down that are looking on this particular screen? Sorry, maybe John is navigating. Okay, it is that
Yes,
one.
so
Okay.
there's that one there, and then there's one closer to the existing driveway, that one, yeah.
Okay, and you don't have any concerns about the health of those trees when the driveway is excavated and cars are moving over top of those roots?
No, I mean, cars move on top of those roots right now. In the gravel section of the kind of the pull off along the street. And I would say if anything, we're not going to do a lot of excavating to get this driveway in place. We have a cobblestone edge and we're actually going to fill over the roots rather than excavate too much. And that helps us maintain root health. And Kent Julian is our arborist. He's a PhD forester, and he will be advising us on the best way to maintain these mature trees this close to the driveway.
Great, I appreciate that. That was obviously my concern. And then secondly, fence, I know you just spoke about the fence and the gate that Joey was speaking of. Is there any proposal to have a fence in the front yard between the street and the property?
No.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so does anyone on the ADR have questions of John, the architect, about the design?
I just have a quick question about the pedestrian gate.
Sure.
Is that at the rear of the property, or where is that located? The 6 foot tall?
That is on the west side of the house.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, John, a couple of questions actually. Could you please show me in the proposed plan where the new garage is, could you please point out where the Russell's kitchen windows are relative to the new garage? And also explain other schemes you might have thought of in terms of keeping the garage where it is, moving the garage forward, like other things you might have entertained when you, I know you went over some of that, but
Sure.
that is of concern.
Sure.
And I will ask in tangent to that, John, if you could speak to the garage location with respect to actually backing out of that garage from a vehicle. I just was curious if you had any conversations about that in relationship to the siting of that structure. Hopefully those two are kind of one and the same conversation.
Okay. All right. So this is the footprint of the adjacent structure. These windows here are the windows that I think are in discussion. The section that we took for that sightline study goes right through this window, and it's essentially the same sill height as this window based on the survey information we had.
Hey, John, can you zoom in on that for the old people on the line? Sorry.
Yeah, seriously.
Works for me too, actually. Okay. Just to recap, this is the footprint of the adjacent structure based on the survey information that was gathered. This is one of the windows here, and that's the other window there. We were able to gather sill and head height information. This is the proposed garage location with respect to those windows. And then this dashed in component here is the existing garage. We had initially, so the design directive was sort of to activate this backyard. And if we look at the existing site plan again, these two pieces cut this backyard in half. And I think the Stolls use this part of their backyard probably 10% of the time that they use this portion of their backyard, which is a shame because the lot is so narrow and long that they don't have the benefit of having a big side yard. So in looking at this, Shelby and I were trying to determine how can we actually make the connection to this backyard better? And how do we make this building look better? Stoll's house is a really attractive house that is not matched by their garage, their existing garage. This is the existing house. In the back, it faces the backyard, shingled house, windows, side elevations, knee braces, eave extensions, things like that. That's their existing garage. And as we can tell from the project history, this thing started out as a carriage house, then it was torn down, it was built as a carport, then later it was filled in as a carport. And quite honestly, it's kind of a Frankenstein. You step down into the garage, there's a stem wall that wraps around that's in several pieces. Doesn't look like it was continuously done. It's not a very good building. And so the thought was, if we're going to try and uncork this back part of the lot, why not take it as an opportunity to create a building that matches the house, that's of solid construction, that has some of the details that are part of the house, and remove or lessen the nonconformity that's created by this house right now, that's right up against the property line.
Did you ever do a study where you moved it way forward and kept it on the property line, but moved it quite close to the residence and therefore closer to the street and away from their kitchen windows?
Yes. And so when you visit the site and you walk through this area, it's a fairly constrained area to come into. And even though it appears to get and does get twice as wide in this location, pushing this garage up into here makes the garage feel as if it is literally jammed up against the house. It does not feel like this open approach to a long, narrow lot. It feels like we have pushed it right up against the house in a way that does not seem in keeping with being respectful of the site. Yes, that would not be in front of, and it would be right up against the property line, which would not lessen the nonconformity. We would still be we would be in conformance with the front yard setback. We would not lessen the nonconformity on the property line side. It would, to Mark's point, it would enable a straight shot into the garage and a straight shot out. This is a completely maneuverable, especially with rear beeper cameras and everything on your cars, out of this space. This is a narrow driveway. The easiest part of navigating this is the area back here. This is the most challenging part to navigate out of this driveway. There's a concrete wall right here up against the driveway. So we're confident that the radius of this is going to allow for the car to come in, get through the doors, and park in here.
Do you think with the garage that far removed from the house and that curve and the fact that you have a manual gate, do you think anyone's even going to use this as a garage? Like you have to open the manual gate first to drive in there and then kind of drive that curve to get in and out? I mean, are we talking about a real garage, or is this more of like a pool house here?
Well, it's not a pool house. It's a garage. There's access to that garage, and you can pull into it. By putting the garage where it is right now and not keeping the existing garage where it is, the likelihood that when someone uses this garage, they're going to park inside the garage is a lot higher. The other scenario, you could be parked out on the driveway in front of the garage and have your car in the backyard. Here, you're probably not going to do that. You're going to put the car in the garage because it's on that turn. So I think that this is actually a real garage that you can pull into. We're not proposing it to be a pool house. It is an accessory structure and it satisfies a parking requirement. But there might be an opportunity that, it has a pool equipment loft in it. There might be storage of ladders and yard tools and things like that in there as well. We have height in there to accommodate some of that storage, but there is going to be a space in there that satisfies the new christened 9x18 Ross parking standard adequately, and especially through the door on the front. So, I think that we're giving it every opportunity to become a parking space, a garage. But it's not mandated that it is one, but it is a full-fledged garage.
If I could jump in, also, keeping it on the property line removes our ability to add any new screening once those redwoods come out. And then we've got an exposed roof, an exposed side of a garage facing the Russell's property without any ability to mitigate on the Stoll's side of the property, which is, you know, what has happened with the existing garage, and the Ruperts have had to take on the cost of screening that for themselves. And by pulling it off the property line, then we are able to add the screening in that area. I think that a garage isn't just for cars. Also, I think that the Stolls have 3 boys. They have three kids, 2 boys. There's a lot of bicycles and golf clubs and tennis rackets and all of the things that we all put in our garages every day. And I think that's a totally appropriate use of a garage. So whether a car goes in it or not, it's still a garage. And we have the ability to mechanize that gate if we need to.
Okay. Thank you. Do any of the other ADR members have questions of either the landscape architect or the architect? No more?
Joey, one more question. This is not directed at John or Shelby. Actually, it's a question for Matthew. If it could, I think one of the, I want to just clarify something, and John made this clear, but this application is for, you know, the garage and the pool and the associated landscaping elements. We have been made aware of the potential for an ADU on this site. Not our purview tonight, but I was going to ask you, in relationship to impervious surfaces, how we should be thinking about, should we be thinking about that in any sort of way? Again, the ADU is not under this application, so I'm not too worried about it, but I was only concerned about its impact to impervious surfaces with relationship to this particular project. I don't know how ADUs address impervious surfaces at all, because they are they're not brought to us if they conform to the setbacks. So maybe this is outside of the bounds of this conversation, but I just want to make sure if there is something we should be considering as a design review committee, relationship to impervious surfaces with respect to flood zones, should we be?
So with the current application before you, which does not include an ADU, impervious surface coverage is something that should be considered under design review. It is one of the design review guidelines specific to low impact development standards for wastewater management, or excuse me, stormwater management. The town encourages reductions in impervious surfaces wherever possible, and where not possible, then on-site facilities or systems should be in place to capture water and prevent runoff. This project does reduce the total impervious surfaces on the property. With respect to an ADU permit, there is a potential for an ADU to be constructed on any single family residential property in Ross, including this property. It's not proposed as part of this application. If an ADU permit meets the ministerial requirements that have been put forth by the state, and there's no substantial indication that there's a life safety or public safety issue, then the town is obligated to approve that ADU permit without regard to increase of impervious surfaces. And that is by state mandate. If an ADU permit is seeking exceptions such that it is not subject to the ministerial standards, then it becomes a discretionary application, in which case impervious surface coverage is something that could be considered through the process.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification, Matthew. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you. Any more ADR questions of either Shelby or John? Okay, so now I'd like to open it up to the neighbors and public comment, and remind each of you that you have a maximum of 3 minutes.
Can I speak?
Did you, yes, have you been authorized or let in?
No.
So if anyone would like to speak, there's a couple ways you can indicate that. You can click the raise hand function, or you can just unmute yourself and say, I want to speak, or wave your hand and let us know, and we'll make sure that you can speak.
Matthew and Mark will either let you in or say, welcome to speak.
And I see Rupert Russell has his hand raised and would like to speak.
Thanks very much indeed. And I want to say I really appreciate all the thought, and I can see that you guys are taking this very seriously. I just want to make a couple of quick points. I and my wife wrote a detailed letter, and I expect my wife will give more detailed thought as well. But the couple of issues that I just want to raise are this property is right adjacent to ours, and the garage structure is currently in the setback and is being proposed to be moved within the setback. So it is something that I would normally have expected us to have been involved in the decision as to where it would be located, particularly given that it is going to have a much greater impact on us than the current location. It is going to take up almost the entire windows of the 2 windows that we have in our kitchen. And from the very start, when we first were approached about this project, we always said that we understood that there was a need to move the garage, and that we were willing to be flexible about it. But there is a large part of our house where we do not have any large windows, and we asked why couldn't the structure be located there? And frankly, a garage, if it's to be used as a garage, should be closer to the street. And it would make a lot of sense that if you actually want to use this as a garage, as opposed to a structure to support the pool, you would have thought that the garage would be closer to the street. And we have plenty of room adjacent to our house. If that's what the purpose of this is, it makes complete sense to move it closer to the street and to not impact us in a severe way within the setback. So for us, it's deeply frustrating that we've been discussing this for over a year, and yet, frankly, the applicants have not taken into account our concerns at any stage in this process. The second point that I just want to quickly make is that we were out of our house for over 2 years from flooding. It's an incredibly painful thing, especially when everything that we owned was destroyed in addition. And so we are particularly sensitive about flood impacts. And what seems to be going on here is that there is a certain amount of hardscape being removed from the front of the property and a large amount of hardscape being put into the rear of the property, whether it's from the pool or from the walkway. There's quite a lot of bluestone that's going down, and there is expected to be an ADU in addition.
That's 3 minutes.
So I understand. I'll finish up. We just feel very sensitive about that, particularly when if you move hardscape from the front to the rear, you're actually moving it into the part where the water comes from. It doesn't come from Ross Creek. It comes from the San Anselmo Creek. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, Rupert. Who else would like to speak?
I would like to speak, Sylvia Russell.
All right, go ahead, Sylvia. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank the committee members for their service. We would really like to be able to support their stalls with our project, but as Rupert mentioned, we do have some concerns. We have been in conversation as Ruben mentioned, for over a year. And we were hoping that they would take some of that conversation into account. So we were really surprised when they put their project forward. Not only had the garage stayed in front of our windows, but it had become even taller than we anticipated. Now the garage is as tall as our windows in height, almost as tall as our windows in height, and definitely the width of all of them. So we are opposing that the garage be moved in the setback in front of our kitchen windows for a number of reasons. First, the reason we moved to Ross was the beauty of the nature that we have here. And as you can see from the photos that we've sent to you, when you look out of the windows in our house, you can see the beauty of nature is through its transparency and multitude of layers of trees. And we love to see the dapple of the light, the sky, the sun, and all the different trees that brings with it. So it's three-dimensional. The proposed bulky structure will take all of that away. It is impossible to see through a building and to see light and sun travel through it like you do with the trees. We will be eventually looking at a wall that is covered by trees, which is very, very different. And as you know, I know their architect will want you to believe that putting in a 14-foot tall, bulky building will not affect their light, but common sense dictates, and the reality is that a bulky building in front of the windows can't help but take away light. The sun that comes into the house, especially in the afternoon, is at 13 feet. That is where it comes in. We could perhaps understand if this was a residence, but it's just a garage, which will probably not even be used as a garage. It will be a storage unit. You know, we have never seen a garage like this Joel's are proposing with doors that open up into the garden. Perhaps it will be a second seating or lounging area. I don't know, but it will be used for storing sports equipment and their pool equipment, which is to be very, very noisy. It makes much more sense to be stored in their ADU or to leave it in where the garage is at present and maybe raise the roof of that present garage and put it in there. But this is certainly not to be used as a garage. Perhaps the doors that they're planning on opening up to the garage, to the garden, could be taken out so it's quieter. But it would be much more preferable to move it in the back. Secondly, we are concerned about the removal of 18 redwood trees and then planting 15-gallon trees. Their home is substantially taller than ours. And planting trees that are only in 15-foot gallons is not going to cover their home the way that the redwoods are creating that screening for us. So we're requesting that the redwoods not be taken out, that the garage be moved forward if possible, as Rupert mentioned. If it is going to be used as a garage, it is much better to be at the front of the property. If it's going to be used primarily for storage, leave it where it is. Raise the ceiling if you want there, the roof a little bit. But I guess my question to this, Jules, is why do something to the detriment of your neighbors, especially if it's only a garage, and more than likely will be used for storage. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
William Devlin would like to speak.
Please go ahead, William.
You need to unmute yourself.
Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, William. Go ahead.
We're very concerned about.
Hold on, William. I can't hear you now.
William, you're going to have to turn off. I think you have another audio device that's creating some feedback. You're going to need to turn something off.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better. Keep going.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, we've got two computers here. The iPad and the other one. We're very concerned about flooding because we've been flooded out twice in the last 40 years. And the amount of paving and impervious surfaces that are being proposed here just exacerbate that. And we know that there's going to be, unless the flood district gets going, which it really hasn't beyond studies, it's likely to happen again. The other thing is that we understand that there is a potential accessory dwelling unit in back of the pool, and that would make it even worse. Plus it's near the creek. We've seen these plans. This is in August. It's not under the current application, but we definitely would like to see that not happen. I sent through an email to the board here in the last few days, and I'd like to make sure that you consider that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to say anything?
Yeah, hi, this is Diane Strasmeyer. I'm at 53 Bolinas. And I want to thank the Stolls for sending me drawings. I realize my property only overlaps yours a small amount, so thank you for sharing your plans with me. One of the concerns I have is I know we're not talking about the ADU. However, I think it's really important when we're looking at these drawings there's no footprint drawn that shows where you could possibly put that unit that does not actually put you in a situation where you're actually building within that creek boundary. And I want to thank you for actually showing the 25-foot line on the drawings, but it does show that you've basically pushed the pool back so far that the only place that you will have left to put the ADU is actually in the creek bed. And I just have to reiterate, I actually was in my house the day that it flooded, and it's really interesting. People talk about the water coming up and they get concerned about the level of the water, but I think it's really important for those of us who were here that day to explain to you how violent that water was. It's hard for maybe you to understand, but my house actually lines up with the intersection at Richardson at Bolinas. And that becomes a big flat waterway that actually makes the water move faster. And so the day of the flood, I had whitewater rapids going down both sides of my house. And it actually flows between my house and the Devlins, and it actually it goes your direction. So one of the things that you need to be really aware of is that if you put that ADU at the back of your lot within that waterway, you will get significant damage, even though you have planned on putting the building up a little bit, because the water will be coming your direction and it's flowing so fast. I just can't even begin to describe it. It is actually terrifying. So I know that, you've talked a lot about that you've got a CEQA exemption for the ADU, but I can't encourage you enough. I can't say it strongly enough that getting a CEQA exemption will not get you an exemption from federal standards, and that will be the Corps of Engineers for the creek, and it will be Fish and Wildlife Service for doing a survey of the actual creek, the little waterway. So I just want to make sure you really research that before you make firm plans with this, because if you go this route and you get your Ross permit first and you find out that your CEQA exemption will not allow the ADU, you won't be able to move. You will have no place on your lot to put that. If you move your pool forward towards your house a bit, you may be able to still fit your ADU onto your lot. So I'm just passing that on as advice. And I am concerned about about impervious surfaces. I think that is a problem that we're all going to have to deal with here. But thank you so much for sharing your designs. It looks lovely. I'm hoping that we can all find a way to make this work that is safe and works for everybody. So thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this project from neighbors, general public? Okay, so I'm bringing it back to the ADR for comments, for final comments.
Joey, as we do that, thank you.
Yes.
I have a question for Rupert and Sylvia. And Rupert and Sylvia, I've read your letter and looked at the photographs from your house, which I appreciate you sending. Is there a way that you could share the screen with that photograph, or anyone here can pop open one of those photographs and you can show us? It's a little hard to see the netting through the redwoods, and I'm trying to figure out where the top of that structure is in the story poles. And is that something you could share and show us?
Actually, Matthew may be better able to do that.
I might be able to do that. Hold on 1 second.
You have them handy, Matthew? Is that something that you can do?
You mean?
I don't have them handy. I'm not sure I received them.
Okay.
Stephen, are you talking about the measuring tape that is in one of the photos to show the height of the garage? Is that what you mean?
Any of the photos that are taken from inside your house that show the view towards the redwoods, and through the redwoods you can see the orange netting. You can see.
Yeah, let me see if I can find that. Give me 1 second, please. Did you get it, Rupert? The photos that I sent. Yeah. Can I have your computer? Can I have your computer? Open that up. Can you open it up in your computer? The photos that I sent you. Thank you.
I'm sharing my screen now, and I believe this is the photo.
Oh, that's the photo of the flood. That's how high the water was. It was 5 feet of water outside and 4 feet in our house. It was not a fun day. I'm trying to bring those photos up. Oh, there you go. There you go. Yes. So that is, yes.
So you can tell me what you'd like to refer to.
What was your question, Stephen?
So is this the roof line, at the top of this?
No, the roof line is, you see on the side, you see here the measuring tape, that yellow stick. The top of that is where the roof line is.
Got it. Okay.
So it would basically cover our entire window. It would be maybe 8 inches from the top of the window. It would cover everything else. So all that beautiful dapple that I was talking about, and the light and the sun usually pops in around 13 feet, which is what I was trying to say. And the redwoods are providing a nice protective cover now. They're a little tall at 18 feet, but if they were brought down, why take all those beautiful redwoods out and then maybe provide lower screening at the bottom half instead of killing all those trees?
Okay, so to the best of your knowledge, the ridge line of the proposed structure is accurately depicted by the top of this tape measure here.
Correct.
Yeah.
I would question that. I'm sorry, but we hired professionals to put up a story pole for this project, and to have a random tape measure out of a window does not accurately tell us that at all. I'm sorry to interrupt, but these are pictures we've never seen before. They've not been entered into the record. I don't know where this is coming from, but I understand your argument, but I don't think that it's fair to say that this is an accurate representation. If that's
So hang on, wait a minute. Let me actually jump in there. That actually we did measure it to 15 feet, and so it's 1 feet. That is actually 1 feet too high, because Matthew on the first page of his report said the height was going from 12 to 15. So that was what we read, and that's what we measured it up to. So you can take a foot off of that, but it's still well above, as you can see, the pane in the top pane of our window. It's at least halfway up the top pane of that window, so that, which makes it about 3/4 of our entire window.
Okay, so this though does not jive with the sun study that John Clark showed us of a section through your window and a section through the new proposed building. Do you think, John, we could go back to that?
Yeah.
Because
would
when
like-
I
can
just
I
like
ask-
to say that
Hold
when
on.
I,
Excuse me.
oh, sorry about that.
Excuse me, I would like John to show us, to go back to the section that's cut through your window
Can I-
and the
Yeah.
new building, please.
Can I just request that we show that photograph one more time and then I'll go to the section study? If you guys can put that photograph up again,
I
please.
just happen to have it. This is not my material here, so don't get mad at me. There we go. I wish we could have visited Rupert's home. I don't know if any of the other ADR members did.
I did.
But
I
okay, so
stood
you-
in that kitchen.
okay, so maybe Joe
I did as well.
this a little bit, but
So I just want to make one comment that if we go back up to the one with the tape measure in it,
go to this one. Sorry, Mickey.
that one's fine. Okay. Regardless of whether that tape measure is at 15 feet or 14 feet, that's 15 or 14 feet wherever that tape measure is put up.
It's from ground level, John.
No, I know, but it's also much closer to you than the ridge of the building. So I'll go back to this.
The ridge will be at least 10 feet away, right? 5 feet set, no, more than that. How far would the ridge be from their window?
Okay. So let's go here. So the point I'm trying to make is that tape measure is put up somewhere here, right? And
That's right.
if that's the case, then this building would be a rectangle at the property line at 14 feet tall.
probably
Right.
did.
But what we're actually talking about is that the ridge is way over here. So the measurement of 14 or 15 feet with the photograph taken from here does not give you the benefit of perspective or the fact that it's actually 5 feet plus, I'm not going to do math that fast, 6'9", so 12 feet roughly for 11'9" from the property line. And then again, another probably 8 feet from, if this is 5 and we double that, let's say 10 feet. So we're looking at 23 feet for 20, we're looking at over 20 feet from this wall to the ridge. Whereas the tape measure we were just looking at is half of that. So that photograph, while it might show a tape measure, does not accurately represent the location of that. What would represent the location of that is if we look through those trees and could see the ridge. But it's really hard to do that because it's screened. And I think what we're talking about is that if we establish screening along this property line again, it's not going to be 20-foot topped redwoods. It'll be something that obscures the ridge and you won't be able to find it, just like you can't find it in those photographs right now. So I think it's worth pointing out that that tape measure, while it might represent a height, does not represent the ridge at all.
But it does represent my view from the kitchen, and I'm
But
still.
we're talking about the tape measure specifically because that was what
understand
was
that, but
promoted as the height of the building, which is not accurate at all.
But
To
it
Shelby's point, we actually hired somebody to come and do story polls. And if we need to create something that shows that ridge better, like a rope light or something that can shine through and we can see it accurately, then we'll do that. But I'm not gonna accept the tape measure at the property line as representing the ridge of the proposed building. It's just not accurate.
Okay, thank you both for those comments. And let's bring this back to the ADR. Are there any other additional questions on the ADR before we start opining?
I just have one quick question of John. John, I know you spoke about the relationship to the garage to the main home. The main home has a bump out of the back. Can you tell me the relationship of the roof pitch of that versus that of the garage, the proposed garage, please? Are they equal or are they similar in pitch?
So the roof pitch for the proposed garage is slightly steeper than the existing pitch on the back of the house. This is
Okay. Yeah, we don't need to get exact. I just wanted to, on site, it looked that way. I just was curious if that
and
was.
that's the pitch on the house. So it's not quite as steep as the proposed garage, but it's steeper than the existing garage.
Okay, thank you.
Hmm?
I don't have any further questions, Joey.
Okay, so why don't we start giving our opinions, and I will go last. Who would like to go first?
I went first on the last one.
Okay, how about you, Stephen?
I'd love to hear.
Laura.
Okay, well, I can go first.
Okay.
I'm comfortable going first. I'd like to hear someone else's opinion about being inside Rupert's home after I go. I think that the project is designed very sensitively in terms of replacing a non-conforming structure with another non-conforming structure that I think on balance, as far as I can see, except for that question about being inside the neighbor's home, does not exacerbate the non-conformity. I think I see it as a kind of an in-kind replacement of that non-conformity. I think it's well designed. I think the placement of the pool makes sense. The placement of the garage makes sense given the complexity of the circumstances. The one modification that I would suggest would be to lower the pitch of the roof to match the house. And I don't know, I'd like to hear, I guess, if that's causes a problem with the pool equipment, because I appreciate that the pool equipment is placed inside the structure. However, the need for the pool equipment itself is a problem created by the project, of course. And so, but I think that if we made the suggestion to lower the roof line to match the house, it might better match the architecture of the house and would further reduce any impact on the neighbor. So pending someone else's input on the ADR group about the impact on the neighbors from inside their house, I'm tentatively able to support the project as submitted with a suggestion for modification of the roof pitch.
Mark, do you want to go next because you were at the site? At the
Yeah, I'm happy to go next. So, but I would ask a question of John, and we can do this at the end. If Stephen's suggestion of lowering the roof pitch to match the existing home, I'm assuming you designed that pitch to be aesthetically pleasing, and you thought, and it is a very good-looking building, especially from that elevation, which you will see when you enter the backyard. So I appreciate that. If you were able to lower that to match the pitch of the home, can you approximate, while we chat here, approximate how much that would actually reduce the ridgeline? I'm going to guess it's not dramatic because the building's not that wide, but it might be, it would be just instructive to Stephen's point, what that would do to the height of the building. Does it go from 14 to 13.6 to 13.2, or does it drop all the way down to 12 feet or something like that? That would be instructive, I think, to help us make an informed decision. And I don't want to put you on the spot, John, because I'm not sure if you can you can Revit or
I'm trying, Mark.
Whether you can Revit or AutoCAD that one so fast, I don't know. I think I appreciate it moving away from the property line, given all the things we try to do to mitigate nonconformities within the town. I appreciate that move. I appreciate the screening. I think the redwoods, while I am innately someone who wants to preserve trees, that is an unusual screening device. If in fact this project moves forward, I would, as Laura was describing, volumes of replacement screening, I would recommend a very large laurel, as practical as you can, so that they're as mature as possible once they're in place. So 15 gallon, I would, if you can bump that up to 25 or so, that would be certainly improve the scenario, the screening scenario that you've got on your hand. The second I would say is, to Stephen's point on the roof pitch, I'm fairly sure that at some point you studied this, but to mitigate that ridge line even further, one could imagine a shed configuration that pitches with the plate height at low point to the Rupert's property, Russell's property, I'm sorry, and elevates to the west. I don't know if that's a study you did, John. It is not in keeping as much architecturally with the current project, but in a mitigating measure, that might be something to study and share with the neighbors. That would move the ridge even further from that property line, right? It would at that point be 20 plus feet from the property line. which I think would mitigate that impact even further. With that said, though, I was inside the Russell's home. I appreciate that opportunity to go in there and see that. The way the property is configured and the rope line, I think I'll call it a rope line that currently exists. I had asked John specifically to look at that section because I wanted to see that relationship and to demonstrate to the group that I believe that its location is far enough away from that property line, the ridge point, that it doesn't and will not significantly impact the light that is coming in through those what would be new screening. I would love to see it dropped as much as possible because the lower that is, the less impact and the less roof that the Russells would see. I would ask the question, the reason I asked the ADU question was twofold. One, to understand the impervious surfaces that Matthew clarified, thank you very much. But I was also curious, recognizing the height of that garage is in somewhat relating to the pool equipment, and as Stephen appropriately stated, it's an impact that is created. I was wondering if that pool equipment could be located in the ADU if that was a projected project, thinking of this thing as a total site, because I think that's the smartest way to look at it, regardless of how it's permitted or who approves what. So if that pool equipment was in fact removed from that garage, not for acoustic reasons, which I agree with John completely, I think that can be mitigated 100%, but it allows that ridgeline to come down even further. And I think that is an opportunity that can benefit both the neighbors and possibly even the property. So those are things that were kind of going through my mind is are there different roof forms on the garage to mitigate that ridge line in its association and its proximity to the property line? Can we drop it at the most simple form, drop that pitch to drop that roof line even further? The pool equipment, is there an opportunity to look at that in a different location on the site so that we can mitigate this, this building location even more? Moving it to the south, the location of the building to the south, I can imagine you could move it a few feet one way or the other without destroying the connectivity you've created with the rear yard. I agree, the current rear yard is pinched. It feels like a separate piece of property altogether. So the project is successfully creating that connection. I don't know whether 2 feet to the front or 2 feet to the rear would make much of a difference in relationship to those windows. But that should be at least studied. I'm sure probably you have looked at that in relationship to the turning radius getting in. So I think my final comment would be, I would look at as many ways as possible to reduce that ridge height. If it's at all acceptable to relocate that ridge to a different roof form that would move it further away from the neighboring property. In general, I appreciate the form. I appreciate the architecture. It certainly fits. It's achieving what you need to do. I would ask to think hard about the location of the pool equipment in that structure and whether that's appropriate, or whether it's appropriate even closer to the pool if in fact another structure exists that you will be planning for in the future. To Stephen, to answer your question directly, and I spoke with the Russells at length and looking through those windows. I think that there is obviously a building that you wouldn't see prior, right? If you look closely in those photographs, it's really hard to see, I think, but that there is a rope line that you can see. I don't, however, believe that it will fundamentally change the light that is coming into that building. And if we're able to drop that even further, I think the impact will be very, very minimal. And I think the screening, the additional screening that's a bit more appropriate possibly than redwood screening, will be successful in blocking that roof from the visual inside the home. So I think that's all the comments I had, Joey, and hopefully Steve, maybe you pull off that a little bit if you had further comments.
Nope, I'm good right now.
Thanks, Mark. Laura, how about your opinion?
Yeah, so I actually kind of agree with a lot of the things Mark was saying. I do think that from the neighbor's home, you will see the roof until the screening gets taller. But based on those sun studies and the distance the ridgeline is from their building, it doesn't seem that it would actually be blocking light. It would just be a visual element that you see until the planting is taller. And I think I have 15-gallon laurels. They're like 6 feet tall, and I don't know how quickly they grow. So I would definitely push on putting in larger, more mature plants from the get-go, because otherwise it could be, I don't know, however many years until it's actually screening the building more. And then, yeah, I just wasn't sure with the location of the building, why exactly it needed to move that far forward. But I don't think I think I would still be in support of this project.
Wait, any other comments on it, Laura?
No.
Okay, Mark Kreshnet, please.
Oh, he's recused himself on this one. I'm not even sure
That's
if
right.
he's listening.
Okay, well then my comments will be the last ones. This is a tough one because, the existing garage is quite non-conforming on the property line, but it's kind of no harm, no foul. No one is upset about that location, and now you're changing something. And while you are, you're supposed to rectify non-conformities, you're doing some of that by pulling it 5 feet off the property line, but then you're making it longer and you're making it taller and you're putting it in front of someone's kitchen window. I do wonder, there's so much being done because of a palm tree in the middle of a property. And I find it very difficult to analyze this project not knowing where this ADU is going to go. It just feels really incomplete to me that we're not seeing the whole site plan, because with that pool way back there, I can't imagine where an ADU is going to go, but it's coming our way and we're going to have no choice about it. And that's very frustrating to me, because I feel that we are not holistically looking at this whole piece of property and how it's going to be developed. I wonder, did you ever think about moving the pool very close to the house, much closer to the house, and leaving the garage where it is? Because let's face it, a garage with, French doors going out to the lawn, etc., is probably not going to be used that much as a garage, especially if there are manual gates to get into it. So did you ever think of just leaving it where it was and making it better looking, and then moving the pool closer to the home, because you're probably going to put an ADU way back there in the setback or close to the creek? Was that ever a consideration? John?
The direction that we were given is that the adjacency of the lawn to the house and the patio and the entertaining area is something that the Stolls would like to preserve in proximity to the house, and that the four-season use of that space versus potentially the seasonal use of the pool sort of dictated this. Just like thinking about the rings of a bullseye, we're putting maybe the more seasonal usage of the pool further out from the center of the bullseye if the house is the center of the bullseye. So from a usage perspective, and building off of the way that they currently use the property, the design directive was to look at preserving the lawn adjacent to the house and putting the pool further in the backyard. So we did not look at putting the pool closer to the house, given that design directive.
Okay. Okay. Well.
And I think that I'll just leave it at that. That's how we proceeded based on the direction of usage.
Could you indicate where an ADU would be placed on this property, what your plans are?
So I just want to go back and I understand that this is that there's a desire to see the whole site plan. The way that we've been advised by staff is to proceed the way we're proceeding with a ADR submission for the relocated garage and the pool with a ministerial approval for the ADU. So I think that I would defer to Matthew a little bit on protocol here and how this works.
Yeah, thank you. So staff has advised the applicant of the options of moving forward with the project. They have chosen to not include an ADU with this current proposal. Any single family homeowner can propose an ADU permit at any time, including at this property. Staff does not know for certain that one will or will not be proposed in the future. I can say that I have reviewed prospective plans for ADU permits on many properties. And it's not really my place to divulge who has consulted with me on ADU permits and who hasn't. The fact is that by law, a ministerial ADU permit is not subject to design review and is not required to go through a public hearing process. And staff has advised the applicant accordingly, and they are not including an ADU in this current project.
Okay.
I'm happy to answer more questions if I can be more clear.
I still don't think under federal law you can build an ADU in an established creek, though. And I'm just saying it seems like that could be a problem.
I would agree. And I don't think anyone's proposing to build an ADU in a creek. I certainly have never seen a plan for an ADU constructed in a creek.
Well, they actually have the only space that's left in the back. The pool is actually fairly close to that 25-foot line.
Diane, are you the one who's speaking?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I can't even see a face, just a name, but this is not the time for public comment anymore. It's
Okay,
just the ADR. We're just trying to gather our recommendations. It's now the time for public comment is closed. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I just have to follow the our protocol, and this is my first time doing it, but I do know that is the case. So let's wrap up the ADR recommendations. My personal recommendation is that I could support the garage moving somewhat forward or staying where it is. Whether the pool stays where it is or moves forward. I don't really love the location of it in front of the windows of the Russells. If there was some way to move it somewhat forward, that would mitigate the problem, even if it had to go a little closer to the property line, or leave it where it is and fix it up and make the pitch of the roof more pleasant and matching with the house. But that said, I think let's tally up now the recommendations from the ADR. From Stephen, Mark, and Laura, we have a supporting this proposal as shown. And from me, a lukewarm, I would rather see the garage move forward or stay where it is, and pool either forward or where it is. But so I think we have a 3-to-1 support, correct?
I would put a recommendation that the roof line be modified to match the main house personally for my positive support, and that a more mature specimen be placed as screening. And I would ask Laura and Mark if they either agree with the roof line suggestion change or no, support it as submitted.
Yeah, I would support that same recommendation, Stephen, to drop the roof pitch, as much as possible. I would also support the mature screening recommendation as well. So Joey, probably some caveats on that.
Yes, see, and if it goes through as shown, I would try to bring the ridge line down as much as possible and plant the most mature laurels we can require. big ones. Quick green.
Yes,
How about you, Laura?
I agree with the Laurel comment. With the roof line, ridge line comment, my understanding is that 14 feet is set by the pool equipment. So even if the angle changes, it just means the sides would come up, but perhaps that's the way I'm understanding it. So I don't have anything to say about the ridge line changing. I think how it's shown, I would support it how it's shown, because I don't think it brings it down by.
John, is that right? Is the ridge line, is that determined by the height of the pool equipment?
By the access to the highest point of access is at the ridge, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So Matthew, have you tallied, you have this all recorded? As we.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I have a tally of 3-1 in favor of design review consistency with the conditions that the roof pitch be more consistent with the main residence and that the plant size be upsized to 25 gallon.
But just to be clear, per Laura's comment, by matching the pitch, we don't mean to increase the plate height, of course, right? That wouldn't help. Yeah.
That would involve, I believe, raising the eaves most likely in respect to the ridge.
Which wouldn't, I wouldn't do that.
Doesn't give us any.
That doesn't get us where we want to be. No.
Right.
Okay.
So John, are we interpreting that properly? That what Laura had described, the height of that ridge is being constrained by the height of the floodplain, pump equipment, and that's how you've set that 14 foot.
Exactly right. Base flood elevation sets the level of the platform.
Yeah.
Clearance at the breaker for the disconnect sets the height at the 14-foot height, allowing also the pump cover to get the filter cover to get off of the filter, which sets the ridge at 14 feet. The
Okay.
same height, the same would be true if it's like I said in the original introduction, if we had a separate structure that was on the site, it's going to be 14 feet tall.
Pool equipment cannot be, just to verify, cannot be in the floodplain,
I
even
was
though it's
very plainly by Rich Simmons, I was told by Rich that FEMA doesn't care about your pool equipment. They want it up out of the floodplain, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
Oh,
Thanks for clarifying that.
didn't know that.
Okay, so I think we have this recorded properly and we are ready to move to the next project. And I
do have a question. I'm
Yes.
sorry. So the recommendation is to make the roof pitch consistent with the main residence, but as indicated, the project requirements require the height of the ridge to be at 14 feet. So I believe the only way to make the roof pitch more consistent would be to raise the eaves.
No. So I think we've nixed that recommendation because we've realized that the eaves would be raised. Is that correct, everyone? Yes.
Thank you.
So as shown is fine if it goes ahead.
And with upsized plantings.
Yes,
Okay.
So can I just ask one question to clarify with that?
sure.
That would mean there's no pool equipment in the garage.
No, Joey's saying that
No.
turn go around in a circle. Because we're sympathetic with the requirements of the pool equipment, we're going to retract the condition of modifying the roof plane at all.
Yes, I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. That what I was trying to clarify with this last discussion was that if we tried to match the roof pitch to the home, we'd end up having to raise the eaves, which we don't want.
Got it.
So now we're saying if this goes through 3-1, just keep it as drawn.
Glad I asked the question. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry for that.
That's fine. That's my own misinterpretation. Thank you very much for the clarification, Jared.
Any other questions? Are we all set on that? Thank you for presenting, Shelby and John, and thank you neighbors for all your commentary. Let's move to the next one.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I apologize, but I actually have to leave the meeting early. I didn't realize that it would go beyond 2 hours.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye.
Okay, thank you, Chair and ADR group members. The next item before you is the Katz residence located at 1 Hilgert Drive. The property is 15,444 square feet, which is less than the 20,000 square foot minimum, so it's constrained by lot size. The lot width is also less than 65 feet, which is less than the 120 foot minimum lot size. So the property is constrained both by non-conforming lot size as well as non-conforming width. And it's located in the flood zone X, which has minimal risk area. And project history is fairly brief. According to the county assessor, it was originally constructed in 1924, and the town does not have any record of any planning permits issued previously. Here we see the project site plan, existing site plan on the left, and proposed site plan on the right. The project proposes to remove the existing 2-story single-family dwelling and detached garage and accessory structure, and replace them, excuse me, with a 2-story single-family residence with basement and accessory dwelling unit located in the basement, and attached garage. Here's some project data indicating how the project would change with development. So the existing FAR is 26.39, which exceeds the 15% allowable in the district, and the building coverage is 15.11, which also exceeds. The asterisk indicates that the applicant's calculations of existing floor area include porches as well as patios that have covered structures over them. The floor area definition allows for porches with a depth of greater than 10 feet, covered porches with a depth of greater than 10 feet to be counted as floor area. It's not entirely clear that all of those areas qualify as actual floor area, but staff is not addressing that in this hearing, primarily because the proposed increase is still very substantial. So whether or not the final approvable existing floor area is that or less, there's still proposed to be a very substantial increase in floor area and coverage. So as we see, the floor area, the FAR would increase by almost 20% based on current figures, and the lot coverage would increase by about 5%, a little more than 5%. The front setback would remain the same. There would be a longer building frontage facing the front of the property. The north side setback with respect to the residence, the main residence, would be reduced from more than 30 feet to about 3.5 feet. One would note that there isn't a detached garage that currently sits on the property line with 0 setback, but I think it's more relevant to consider the larger main residence in relation to existing and proposed. So there would be a significant reduction in the north side setback to the residence. The south side setback would remain technically the same at 10.7. However, one can see that there'd be a much longer building wall or wall plane that would be facing that setback area. And also covered parking spaces would be increased with the addition of the 2-car attached garage. I should also note that impervious surfaces are also proposed to be increased by this project. Here are building details. The existing building height for the existing 2-story residence, which is a rather traditional design, is a little under 25 feet. The current project proposes to build up to the 30-foot height limit, so adding approximately 5 feet to the building height. The stories would remain the same essentially. There would be a full basement included with the new development. The existing primary unit, again, according to the applicant's calculations, is 4,076 square feet. They would add nearly 3,000 square feet. So a little over 7,000 square feet is proposed for the primary residence, which would be located at the top 2 stories and part of the basement. And then the 800 square foot accessory dwelling unit would be located entirely in the basement. Here are colors and materials. The applicant is proposing a modern design with stucco and brushed aluminum and wood paneling as primary materials. There were public comments received objecting to the project based on concerns about the proposed size and massing and location of the proposed new residence from neighbors at 17 Norwood, 5 Hillgert, 7 Hillgert, and 8 Southwood. The permits required for the project include a demolition permit to demolish an existing residence. With respect to that, there is a historic resource evaluation report that has been submitted that the ADR group may comment on, was included in your packets. Design review is required to construct the new residence, as well as for construction and improvements within 25 feet of a creek, and to construct more than 1,000 square feet of new impervious landscape surface. An ADU permit is required for the new ADU within the basement, and a variance is required for the new construction to exceed the allowable standards for floor area, for building coverage, and for the front setback, the north side setback, the south side setback, and the rear setback. In summary, staff requests that the ADR group discuss the merits of the project and provide a formal recommendation to the town council regarding the merits consistent with design review criteria and standards. I am available to answer any questions that you may have, and I believe the applicant and owner Simon Katz is available, as well as Steve Swearingen, the architect, is also available to present information. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. So generally at this point, we would have the applicant, the architect present the project, but for this particular project, it's a little unusual in that I think it would probably be smartest for the architect to take some questions from the ADR right off the bat. Generally in Ross, when you have a home that you are demolishing that is already non-conforming in FAR, you would never be allowed to add as much FAR as you are adding, nor would you be able to exacerbate the setbacks. You would be expected to somehow mitigate, make it better, work on the setbacks. This is pretty far off the norm for the type of projects that come before us. So I think rather than spend a lot of time with the architect presenting, maybe the ADR asks a few questions first before we get really far into this. That's kind of been suggested to me. I think the architect and applicant may need some guidance from us for the next submittal. Do any of you on the ADR want to go first, asking some questions of the applicant and architect, or giving guidance?
I'm not exactly sure where to start. I don't know if Stephen or Joe, you want to jump in, but I guess I initially have a question about the basement. I looked at the drawings. The plans didn't seem to indicate a developed basement for the entire project, with the exception of the ADU section. I just want to ensure that I understand at least what is being presented. The full basement is being calculated within the proposed FAR, but it didn't look as it was being developed, like it didn't have any particular program in the basement there. Am I reading that correctly? I guess Steve, can I clarify that?
Mark, presently, first, thank you, Joey. I think it makes sense to take this and help us to hear the nuances and the real straightforward piece of what design review criteria really mean, so we can help our customer client understand what he can do to mediate his dream, which is he's worked really hard to create his own home, and here he is doing that and seeking to figure out what the relationship with the town is so that we can make something that's fit in alignment and in integrity with all the agendas on the table. And we need this appointment with you today so we can get that feedback. I want to start just by saying that.
Great, great. And that's actually exactly why we were the origins of this group as an advisory design committee, was to provide advice and guidance, you know, before people got too far into the design process. So we generally, it's sad that we have to do it by Zoom, because we used to actually all gather around a table in the town hall and look at drawings together and welcome all the neighbors to come forward. And unfortunately, this is very impersonal now, but I think we can achieve the same things tonight with you all and try to help you make a better design.
We're super excited to get that feedback and hear from you about that. And and to Mark's question, the hope is to in fact develop the basement, and there has been a drive to develop to the point where we understand where we're limited, where's the edge, and while we can look at developments, while we've looked at development standards, we're also a little perplexed by how to really best align with design review. And so we know coming in that we're putting a lot on the table, and we know that it's a big ask, but we're also seeking feedback so that we can make this align.
Yeah, okay, and I appreciate that. So that answered my question. So there was an intent to develop that basement. That was one just practical question. I'm Joey and Stephen jump in. I think that Joey started out with one of the biggest constraints, right? When you're over FAR and you have some nonconformities, we absolutely guide participants and project applicants to mitigate those as much as possible, or to limit their development to the existing, say, FAR. So many homes in Ross are higher FAR than their lots allow for, depending on how the codes were written at the time. And some adjustments are made when it's a renovation, and we see exceptional design and program requirements that allow things to kind of bump above those existing conditions. When a home is being designed from scratch, as Joey said, the biggest constraint is we look at that FAR and we say, if you're above what exists for that lot, what is proposed to that lot, we look at that as the cap, and that's a guideline. It's certainly not written anywhere, but is a long-standing guideline within the town. So if you're at 24% FAR and the lot is a 15 or a 20, we would expect a proposal to come in at 24 at max. We'd like to see it drive back down towards the proposed lot coverage or FAR that's proposed for that area. What we try to do is keep the context of the site, the neighborhoods, the character of that neighborhood intact to some degree. I think that's one of our guiding principles. We look at that, doing it by mass and volume, relationship to the street. We're not as concerned about it being a modern home versus a traditional home. We've had lots of different styles come before us. And I think we have architects and designers on the review board that have personally done a variety of different styles. So that's certainly not a particular issue. I think I can say without fear of conflicting with any of my design review partners who I haven't actually spoken with at all, this one is, this proposal that currently stands has some challenges, big challenges with respect to the bulk and mass. Like, I think that's first and foremost. First, it's FAR, it's wildly oversized for that lot and for the zone it's within. So when you look at the neighboring homes, you look at the scale of the homes, the detail of the homes, the way that the street frontage is respected. What you've proposed is incongruous with that. I would say very strongly what you presented, you've gone maximum height, which we recognize in not only FAR, but lot coverage and height. Just because it can be 30 feet doesn't mean it should be 30 feet. So many times we look at homes in relationship to the maximum height, in relationship to the street frontage, right? So you put 30 feet right at the front. right? If a home was going to tap out at 30 feet, it should be much further away from the front property line, from any property line than it is currently proposed. So that the height, the bulk, you've pushed forward so that it doesn't respect the sort of street profile, the character of that street. And again, it's not about the architectural style, it's about the bulk and the mass. So right away, I think you can tell by those story poles that it would dominate that landscape and that environment that isn't necessarily appropriate in any way, shape, or form. So those are some just initial like reactions about the bulk and mass. I think what's interesting about this project to some degree, you're replacing a home that, while I read the report, doesn't have historical value. There's not a home in Ross, I believe we've gone through this over the course of the past 10 to 12 years. There's not a home in Ross that really meets that criteria by the letter of the law. However, there is some level of respect that we like to think that home has. There's a style associated with that home that I'm speaking for some other folks, that I think fits the character of Ross. It's fine to replace it with a modern home, but that character is about it has a bulk and mass sort of style and approach that I actually do think needs to be respected even in a new style. So it's a two-story home, but that is only represented by those dormers. That second story is sort of embedded in the roof. It has a character of sort of being more diminutive. So I think you can achieve that in a modern home, but what you've done is max it out with every possible. You've gone down, you've gone up, you've gone to the left and the right and the back. And I think that's just not appropriate for this particular site. And what I would say is, many times we try to work, you've watched this maybe previous applicant, we work with folks to maybe reduce heights, we move things in, we move things around. I don't know where to start on this one other than with a blank sheet of paper. I think it's just not in any way in keeping with the design guidelines that we have about minimizing bulk and mass, fitting into the environment, respecting the natural environment as well. So I can't even say, well, reduce it by 5 feet and push everything back and move this wall this way. It doesn't have the characteristics that I know where to start with. And I hope maybe Joey or Stephen can, but I can only start to like breaking up the mass, reducing the volume, reducing the mass overall. Those are things that I would maybe begin to describe. Stephen, Joey, I'm happy for you to jump in. And if we were over Trace, I would sketch something, but we're not.
Stephen, I would like you to speak now, because you've actually been successful at designing and building a modern home in Ross, and you're very familiar with, kind of getting through this process. If you want a modern home, how does that work? What were the things you needed to, that you needed to think about vis-a-vis the house you designed on Kent Poplar?
I think that before I mention that from a design perspective or design modifications, I think to reiterate what you're saying, both of you are saying about the numbers. You got to make the numbers work so that we do no more harm, don't exacerbate the non-conformities that exist. And I think that goes for the setbacks as well. And Matthew was trying to point out that the setback, yes, the setback on the garage is 0 right now, but just from a bulkiness standpoint, or a more poignant, is the setback of the main house. And so, pushing the boundaries of the setbacks is as important as the FAR. And Mark, when you said that just because the height limit is stated to be 30 feet doesn't mean that that's contextually appropriate for every site. And I think that that's what I use as a litmus test is contextual appropriateness. Does it feel like it fits in a massing, from a massing standpoint, from a sheer size standpoint, and then to make things a little softer, not architectural vocabulary wise, not style wise, but we want deeply set windows and eaves and articulation on the facades. We want plane changes, roof line changes, things that will make it look less like a shoebox that's, and your design does not look like a shoebox, but less like the prescription of a 30-foot height limit to the maximum side setbacks and so forth. And so the more that it can look, varied and has compositional interest that is contextually in keeping with other patterns of development around it. So if something is Victorian nearby and Victorian's not your thing, that's okay. But if we can, create rhythms of things and break things up in a way that's sympathetic to those patterns, I think that's what you're talking about, Joey. And it's just too big, it just looks too big. It is too big, but how big is not too big is a function of two things. One, technically just the practice, even though it's not codified, is to allow an existing nonconformity to be replaced. And so to take advantage of the amount of square footage that's on the site, but to replace it isn't automatic. Even then, you have to design it sensitively so it doesn't so it fits in contextually. And so, yeah.
Yeah, so I would reiterate, just to wrap it up, I would reiterate what Stephen and Mark said, and I will be really pretty blunt. It's way too big. It's exacerbated all the nonconformities. The setbacks are worse than they were. The 30-foot height limit is not a guarantee, especially when it's a parapet roof and you're basically boxing it out to the max. That it's just in Ross, that just doesn't go over so well. There's also a big mandate to use natural materials, natural colors. It's very hard to get a big white box approved in this town. If you look around that street in Norwood, Southwood, it's just not the language around here. And there's plenty of beautiful modern homes in town that have been approved and are actually well loved. There's one that we were involved in that's up on Woodside that I do believe is one of the most successful modern homes in Ross, where they used a lot of natural materials. They have a green roof. They were able to step back. Basically, if the bigger the house is, the further it has to be off the road, and the further it has to be away from the neighbors. So if you want a giant 30-foot box, you need a big setback, and it needs breathing room, and it needs natural materials. It can't just be this big white house. So hopefully do you think we gave you good guidance this evening?
I think it's pretty awkward to be in your shoes to be able to say it. It's probably reminding you of a college crit. So I'm totally satisfied with what we've heard. Simon and I will go off and talk about what this feedback really means, and really engage with the constraints that need to be started from. If it's a rethink back to square one with, hey, let's address what the real boundaries are of what you can use space for, and then consider what that means in terms of the context and the sensitivity to what else is being said in the neighboring fabric.
Right. One thing I will point out that is, while it's not really written anywhere, it's in practice. When you have a non-conforming house vis-a-vis FAR, you will never get any more than what's there.
Yeah.
You're not going to get any more square footage than what's existing, because it's already way over the allowed FAR. So that's just kind of a rule of thumb in town. And if you can only make the setbacks better, you can't make them worse. So that's just like when you're playing around with your sketch paper, that's a good place to start.
I think another home, because I think it is helpful to see some of the things that have been done in the past 5 or 10 years. Is it One Ames, Joey?
Oh, yes.
It's a beautiful home. It's the, you go down Ames and it's on the left. I don't know if it's one. you may already know the owner.
Kind of, it's at the intersection of Ames and,
Yeah, we know it.
Shady.
We know it.
Yeah, you know it. Okay. I mean, that's a home that we also reviewed. It's a modern home. What I think we appreciated about that was as Stephen is describing this character of planes and volumes that helped. It's a larger lot, and it's certainly set in a different environment, and I recognize that. But it dealt with the mass, which is a very large home. It dealt with the mass in a very sensitive way to mitigate that scale. And certainly, it doesn't have the street frontage character that you will be looking for. But I think that those are the big relationships that how it addresses the street and it's the scale and mass that it does so is pretty important. And we, as Joey said, if it's 30 feet, the further back it goes, and you could recognize that by the character of that street. When you walk up and down it, and you certainly are looking on the side of this particular property, those homes are recessed, many of them one story, pretty far. So I think that would be something to think about as you start to mass this out. And certainly another consideration is the creek behind you. I know we received a few letters of concerns with respect to the flooding. I know you're not in a flood zone per se, but there is the creek there. People, as you could hear maybe from the previous applicant, there's sensitivity in the town on flood issues and in proximity to creeks. And that should just be understood. And I don't know how that is affected by excavating down into a basement level. I don't know how the floodplain works when you do that. But that's something, you and Matthew maybe can consider and talk about.
An ADU can be used to increase square footage, right, Matthew? And so if it might be a reasonable application to do a 1-for-1 square footage replacement with the house and also add the square footage of an ADU, but so that might be a supportable arithmetic, but it's only, again, if it's contextually appropriate. Right, Matthew? So mathematically that might be a presentable application, but then you'd have to judge it from an ADR perspective and thinking about design review criteria as you bring it to us, Steve, thinking about, does it look like it fits in from a massing perspective? If you're gonna, and just because the rules say that an ADU is allowed, it's treated like, we treat it anyway, like the height limit, where just because the prescription might allow it doesn't mean that it fits the site.
Yeah, I mean, picking up on that and the other applicants, for example, the roof ridge on the previous, that might be the constraint, that might be the development standard, but no one even talked about that being the limiter. The limiter in that case was the equipment inside the attic, not a ridge height. So to your point, the prescription isn't necessarily the solution.
Correct. One other thing about an ADU and accessory structures, I noticed in your design, pretty much all of the square footage is lumped into the one main structure. I think we prefer to see a property developed where the ADU is actually a separate structure. We are not inclined to favor applicants taking the ADU square footage and absorbing it into a brand new house. It's much more preferable in town for that ADU to stand alone. Wouldn't you all agree with that? It's kind of our guidance, and it's odd to us where it's added into brand new houses and it just jacks them up and makes them way too big.
I would say I agree with that guidance, Joey. I don't know from a letter of the law whether or not we have that purview.
No, but it's
that recommendation.
It's definitely preferable. It is something we look for and we like.
We can hear that.
It helps break up the mass, make for a charming composition, and
a complex or a compound.
Yeah. Yes. And the ADU I think Matthew can validate this. ADU, if it gets into the second story, becomes something that now is not administrative approval. It becomes an issue. I don't know what happens when it goes in the basement. I don't know how that works.
Technically, the ministerial requirements would allow for an ADU at the first story or no higher than the first story. So
no higher than the first story. Clever.
Works from that standpoint. If I could just provide some information in relation to the comments that have been provided by the ADR group. The zoning code actually codifies the policy that was discussed in terms of allowing existing non-conforming area to be retained, floor area, but not necessarily to assume that it can be further increased. That's spelled out through the non-conformity permit, which does allow for existing non-conforming structures to be altered, relocated, reconstructed, expanded, and enlarged, provided that the non-conforming floor area is not increased. It's very clear that if non-conforming floor area is to be increased, that a variance is required. And so that clearly states that the town's policy is sets a much higher bar for increasing non-conforming floor area. And this is information that has been conveyed to the applicant through this application process. This is not new information. And I can also advise that an ADU would be looked at somewhat separately from that as well, because an ADU is looked at favorably by the town as well as the state in terms of creating housing allowances. And so when there is sort of the idea of one-for-one replacement of existing floor area, but then adding an ADU is generally something the town council or the town staff and ultimately town council could support. Again, provided design review requirements. And then I have a suggestion that I'd like to put out there if one would consider it. This is, I wonder if one or two ADR group members might want to volunteer to form an ad hoc subcommittee to offer to work with the applicant to take the bones of a good project and actually transform it into that project that can be approved. I think that might assist the applicant if they're also willing to work with an ADR group subcommittee. I think that might be something that could be productive in this case.
Thank you.
Any volunteers for that?
I think I would, maybe I'll jump in here on that, but we have done that. As a matter of fact, the first application we saw tonight, you know, we met with them outside of the formal meeting just to kind of tweak some, to clarify some of our responses. In this particular case, I think what I would prefer if I was going to volunteer to be on a subcommittee, which sounds very governmental, by the way, I would want to have something a little more refined to respond to. So what I would prefer is, Stephen and Simon, you guys get together and whatever portion of the application there is, and really work through the program, work through some of these constraints that have been laid out from an FAR perspective and a setback perspective. And I would, you could come to a subset of us, but I think we would need something to respond to in lieu of starting from scratch as part of a design team, right? I don't think you need us as a design team. I think but I would be happy to, look at some responses if you have some proposals. We've seen that before as well. We saw a proposal for a site here in town a month or so ago that was schematic in nature. Remember that was a massing up on that ridge, and we were able to kind of give some responses like, yeah, that's an appropriate mass. We didn't talk the details or anything along those lines. It was really, here's our site, a party, so to speak. I mean, in the basic sense, our site strategy. I'd be happy to be a member of a committee that walked and reviewed some things like that. So I won't speak for Joey or Stephen. I'm fairly busy, but I'd be happy to do that. But a blank piece of paper would be hard because that.
Yeah, I think we need something to respond to. So there needs to be a design that comes back to us, and then we could offer our time to work with it if it comes back and it still is not quite right. And I've done that before, and we're happy to do that, but I don't think you want us just to start from scratch with you.
No, we that's not something I think we need. I think that it would be wonderful to know that there's a channel, if even informal, that if we get to that point and say, gosh, we think we've got something here to get a little bit of off the paper feedback from, just to make sure we're not fuzzing off into the weeds.
Yeah,
that would be great. Obviously you're busy people. We don't want to encumber another hearing with something like this. We'd rather come back and hear things like, wow, you've come a long way. This is great. We really like where you're going. Yes. That's kind of where we want to go. So
exactly. Yeah. I think we're all on the same page. Do you have any other questions of us, or you feel like you've got a good direction?
I've got a great direction. I'd invite Simon to ask anything if you have anything to ask, Simon.
He's got to unmute himself.
You're mute.
Oh, hi, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to review our project. And I'm sure we'll come back with something a little bit more delightful and easier for you guys to judge on and comment or critique. The goal is to build a beautiful house and make sure everybody is satisfied. And I don't want to upset, obviously, the neighbors and the town or anybody involved, but also don't want to put in a lot of money and really not feel like I got a rewarding experience from this whole journey. So whatever help you guys have, we appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll come back. Something has to be done with that property. So we'll figure that out.
Okay. So I think we're going to wrap this one up. And thank you so much for being here and listening to our comments. And we look forward to seeing you the next round. Okay.
Thanks so much. Appreciate
it. All right. Thank you. Now, are we going to wrap it up, Matthew? Or are we? What happens next? Mark, come back.
That was a long pause.
Mark, you're the chair now.
Well, good job for Joey leading the meeting there. That was, first one was especially tough.
Baptism by fire.
There you go. Great. So we have no conceptual advisory design review, although you actually guys, you just did that sort of. And good job on that last one, because I think it would have been, I think you had the most productive use of time as opposed to going over those plans and having them go through the plan. So congratulations to you three.
I would mention that, this kind of giving our design time for free is like, we'll do it when something's very close, but this kind of like starting with, like maybe he needs a new architect, or, I'm not, just like Mark said, we're not going to start from scratch with someone.
Yeah, and I wouldn't expect that. I was assuming that they would come back with something, and that then there may be like a conceptual, that rather than coming back to the formal meeting, that there could be the more informal check-in to get them
right
off the ground. But absolutely, the ADR group should not be doing the designing per se.
Exactly.
That's the job of the architect and designer.
Right.
And on item number 6, Joey, if you click on the agenda, and maybe you already did this, Matthew included the ADU information bulletin, and it has the 3 different types and what's required of each and what people can do and what is just sort of theirs by right. And that's excellent reading. I was amazed that if you're doing the ministerial one, you only need a 4-foot side and rear setback, which seems strange to me, but it says, oh, and maybe that's only for existing buildings, but it also sort of looked like it could be for new buildings.
That's for existing and new buildings.
So you could build a brand new building up to 16 feet tall within 4 feet of your side or rear setback and not need any design review whatsoever. And it's just yours by right.
That is true. That's the state law in action. Yes.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, I don't know why you're not building one because you can get them up to 1,200 feet.
I'm going right now.
Get your hammer. I talked to my wife if we should build one. She's like, what would we do with it? I'm like, I don't know. It just seems like you should build it because you
Just
can.
build it.
For God's sakes.
Holy crap. Okay. Wow.
But that's an excellent
This
thing.
is in the agenda. Is that correct? You said, Mark?
If you look at the
It's a link.
agenda online,
It's a link to the agenda. Okay.
there's a link to it
Okay.
in
thank
number
you.
6A.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, great. Thank you, Matthew, for providing that. That's a lot of new information for us.
And Matthew,
Wow.
for some reason, I had trouble printing that out. It wouldn't format correctly. Could you send that attachment in an email to us? Because it would just be easier to print out then.
Sure, I can do that. It's
Thank
11 by 17, which may be the issue.
Oh, that is the issue. But I think if I had it in an attachment, I could scale it down where from the website, I wasn't able to.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, I like this. This would be just good for me to have on my desktop. Wow, this town's gonna look really different.
Yeah, so really, if the Stoles had just used that as their ADU, they could have built that structure 16 feet tall, 4 feet from the property line. No problem.
But they would need a
The only
kitchen
issue was, say
and a
again?
bath, right? They need a kitchen and a bath.
Well, yeah, I mean,
But
it
like
has
now
glass
they're gonna have
doors opening out to the pool. It's a pool
I'm
house,
just-
right?
I'm just clarifying.
But now they're gonna have both. They're gonna have the garage and the ADU.
Right.
So that
Right.
property is gonna be so overdeveloped for its size. You know,
But that's the rules though. So yeah, those are good things to keep in mind and good things for us to understand too, because there were certainly still there are aspects that I don't understand, but I understand it better now.
it is hard to not be able to see the whole site plan as they plan to develop it.
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. They give you the right to do that. So you can request it. And then, the day after you're done, then go back and say, okay, now I want my ADU 4 feet from here and 4 feet from here, 16 feet tall, 1,200 feet. Because I guess if you build a 2-bedroom one, you can go up to 1,200 feet. It said in one of the things.
Correct. Or actually, I believe it's 1,000 square feet for a 2-bedroom.
Okay, I thought I saw 1,200 somewhere, but I don't remember where that was.
Up to 1,200 square feet with discretionary approval from the town council.
Okay, so but you get 1,000 square feet guaranteed with a 2-bedroom.
Well, so yes, but only 800 square feet is automatically FAR exempt by right. So if you're building a 1,000 square foot ADU, you would have to have at least 200 square feet of allowable floor area, or you would be going over the allowance.
Got it. Okay, so really you're allowed an extra 800 square feet.
Yes, exactly.
Plus the
minimum
egress,
square feet,
which I guess goes away, you said.
4-foot setbacks.
Okay.
Mark, I look forward to the party at your house to celebrate your new ADU.
Guys, can we wrap it up? Are we?
Yes.
Just
sorry. Okay, so
I'm just getting hungry.
Yeah, I ate when I was on pause. So I call for adjournment of the meeting. Does someone second?
I second. Third.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Sorry you had to do so much of it without me, but you did great.
No. Okay. Good job, everyone. Happy holidays, and 2021's right around the corner.
See you in the new year, guys.
2020 sucked.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Good job, Joey.
See ya.
Good job tonight, Joey.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Don't forget to stop recording, Matthew.
I will do that.
Bye. Thanks. Oh, I guess I'm okay.
I just
Nope.